This has been bothering me for like...
Oh, yeah, no, go ahead.
For like 10 minutes now. Okay. Today I'm here with my buddy Mateo Murphy. I urge you to check out his music, which I have linked in the description of this video. Mateo is someone who performs regularly with different types of setups depending on the circumstances. And today he's here with a very interesting and quite frankly tempting DJ modular hybrid setup, which we'll be exploring in detail. In terms of how everything is divided and organized, he's controlling digital decks on Traktor. These decks are routed through his audio interface and into the Model 1.4. So this is my Model 1.4. He actually has the Model 1, which he uses for live performance, which has 2 more channels. And to the left, he's got a modular rig, which in this instance, he's using mainly for effect sends through the Model 1.4. And below that, he's got the TR8, interestingly, not the TR8S, which he uses for obviously adding live drums. This video is filled with tips and tricks on how Mateo approaches or handles his live set with this setup, and also some pro tips about just performing and the craft and artistry of live performance in general. There's a lot of information here, so take a look at the chapters or timestamps linked in the description if you'd like to jump to anything specific or if you don't want to miss anything. Of course, this is something I have to mention every video. Your support is greatly appreciated. If you'd like to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button, drop a comment, There's also affiliate links for some of the gear mentioned in this video, so that'll be in the description as well. If you end up using those affiliate links to purchase your gear, I actually make a small commission from that. It doesn't cost you anything extra. And today's sponsor is DistroKid. If you are an independent artist or producer, maybe looking to officially release your own music, DistroKid is the best way to go. It's the best option. And if you are interested in possibly signing up with them, that's actually another way of supporting this channel. There's a discount link in the description of this video, which if you use, I make a small commission off of as well. So that helps. It all helps. And we'll of course be getting into reasons why they're great later in this video. So let's get on with it. DJ, modular hybrid, Mateo Murphy. Let's do it.
So this is my hybrid DJ live setup. It's actually based around playing tracks off of Traktor and then using the modular as an effects processor with some improvised drums on top. So often what I do is rather than play complete tracks, I loop little bits of them and then layer them together, put drums on top, run everything through effects. And it's sort of a way of kind of deconstructing the tracks and making new material out of them, putting a build up and a breakdown at a different moment because that's when I feel it should be happening rather than where the track was designed. So it's really using finished material, but a sort of raw material for making something new out of it.
So in terms of, I guess just the audio flow, because there's a lot going on here, obviously. Yeah. Where is the centerpiece sort of this setup?
Well, it's kind of 2 sides. So the DJ side happens here with the controller. Normally I have 2 controllers to control 4 decks, and I use a 6 inputs on the mixer. So, and I can often focus just on the DJing for long periods of time. It's just when I feel I need to go in a different direction that I can bring the other stuff in. So assuming this is the 6-channel mixer, I'd have the 4 channels of Traktor control going into there. And then I use both sends that go into the modular along with QB. Normally I'll put a delay and a reverb on the sends and then use the Q as a distortion bus and then mix it in parallel.
Is that a hack, or is that something that a lot of people do?
I guess it's sort of a hack. The thing is the mixer was designed to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's not on the normal panel, but if you use the D-sub connectors, you get basically both auxiliary sends, the QB, and the master out. That allows me to use the QB and the master out, put effects on them. This is something I'm playing around with, is put a compressor on the master output and then have that go into the PA rather than directly from the mixer. But I'm still figuring that out.
Interesting.
But yeah, so it's basically using the QB as a third auxiliary, except you only have one control, which is this. But for the way I use it, it doesn't really matter because then I usually just use it on one track or sort of a mix of what's going on here. It's a bit of a hack, but again, the mixer was designed to support that. If we go here, then this is the I/O. I have sort of the effects here. I'm using this as the reverb, this as the delay. There's some other effects that aren't plugged in yet because I haven't figured out which ones I prefer, but this is sort of the setup right now. Then I have this and the filter here, which is sort of the distortions, like a multi-band stereo distortion, which is what's connected to QB, and that goes back through channel 2. And then I have the drum machine that goes into the mixer here, which goes into compressor and then into channel 1. Normally I have it set up a little differently, but essentially that's how it works.
Okay, cool. I cover the TR-8S a lot, and so you have the TR-8. So just a few reasons, why haven't you updated? Because there's actually a lot of people who use the TR-8 who decided that they don't need to update. So why is that?
I guess a couple of reasons. First of all, I don't need the sampling and all the other abilities enough to upgrade. There are certain advantages to this in terms of the number of controls, whereas on a TR-8S you have 3 knobs for channel. On this one you actually have 4 for the kick and the snare. So you have a little, the compressor's not super useful, but you do have a little bit of capabilities that you don't have. I use it for pretty much only 909 style sounds. Having said that, I'm actually leaning towards other drum machines.
Like what?
Eventually. So I have a Syntact, which is a little less immediate, so this is why I'm bringing this. But there's also, it's called the Nava 9. It's like a 909 clone. The thing that's great about the TR-8 is that it's really performance oriented. You've got a knob per function, you've got the sliders for the volumes, which is really great. The way I use the drum machine when I'm performing is to improvise. I'm constantly just like, programming it on the fly. Something like the Syntact isn't really designed for that. You're switching pages, you're doing things. So that's something I use like to just program a pattern in advance and then have that playing on top. So maybe as part of a bigger live setup, I would have that. But I like just having that classic 909 drums to put on top.
And the only thing, because here, just to give a visual of this actually for people watching. Like just to show the difference here. So you've got 3 knobs per channel instead of 2. It more or less looks, it's like very similar. The only thing I see here that's sort of different is the scatter function. So like, is that something that you ever use?
I have used it. The thing is, you have to remember this was really like part of the first sort of rollout of the Roland area products, and the TR-8S is the second generation where they learned from how people were using this and what they were asking for additionally. And one of the things was the scatter kind of. This is the 808, 909, 707, 727.
Okay, so you've preset those in there?
That's just the way it comes.
Oh, okay. And can you upload samples into it?
No.
Not even?
No, it's
okay,
really
so it's
just...
okay.
But Roland did at one point add 606, so actually I think that's the white one. I like the fact that it's limited because it does what I need to do.
And even with the TR-8S, I find myself just using like the classic Roland drum sounds, basically like this. They just recently uploaded the CR78 sounds, which I use like all the time now. They're really good. And just with ACB, it's just like it's such a useful tool. The only thing, do you find that these drum sounds are sometimes a little bit too thin over the mix?
It's not a problem with this and the compressor. So distortion compressor. And this is actually an emulation of an old Boss mixer, the BX8. There was actually a series of them, which are actually really famous in the 90s techno scene because a lot of artists were using those at the time. And they were famous in particular for kind of an overdriven sound. So overdrive the drum machine, overdrive, the 303s or whatever into the mixer. So that's why the thinness is not a problem, and B, I don't even care that it doesn't sound super authentic because I'm, distorting and compressing and kind of messing it up. So it's good enough for what I do, and I like the immediateness of it.
Maybe walk us through like the setup and get some sounds going here.
All right, so let's say I'm gonna just start something here.
This is something on Traktor, by the way. It's off screens.
Traktor. So it's just a track. Normally, I would play and then I maybe start messing around with it later, but for the purposes of this demonstration, I'll start messing around with it now. So let's say I will loop a bit of it, and then maybe, I'll have another. So this is another track mixing on top. I'll loop that as well. So, I do a lot of this kind of stuff. Even like 4 decks sometimes. And so now I can play with some effects. So, this is the reverb. I have it here, and I can do weird things with it, like change the clock speed of the reverb. And then here I have the delay. One of the reasons I like this delay is it has like high and low pass on it, so I can really kind of sculpt the feedback and just kind of like just do washes of effects.
Nice.
Yeah, same thing on this channel here. So then I'm gonna add little hand clap. Hi-hats. And then maybe, filter out the kick. Add my own. Okay, that's pretty crunchy. This is also the reason why I like the Model 1 so much, is having all of these filters. You can kind of really home in, like boost certain frequencies.
Yeah, you've got like your like specific like surgical kind of thing going on there.
Yeah, and it's especially useful because I'm layering entire tracks that I want to be able to just grab like just a little slice, you know, or just play around with. I can do this, or
right.
I can, for example, just have swells of reverb here. And since you can go into pre-fade, I can actually kill the dry signal and just have wet here. And then
yeah.
Compared to playing with Ableton Live, Ableton Live really forces you to prepare a lot of stuff ahead of time. And what I missed with that is sort of the spontaneity that a DJ has of saying, okay, I'm going to play this at this time. Traktor is so much better for that. And then also just the way, I can loop little bits, unloop, skip around. Ableton doesn't really support that kind of flow, So definitely has its strengths, but for the way I like to perform, which is really kind of improvisational, just spur of the moment, okay, this is what I feel like doing, I prefer Traktor. So I'll often play my own material. The other thing though is that I can do the same thing just using Live and the rest of the setup in a very similar way, just playing stems. And actually, one thing I've done recently playing Live is to just kind of dump the synth parts of my tracks, have those play in Live, and then layer drums, do all the drums kind of improvisationally on top.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because that's sort of where I could see myself heading. I'm thinking of doing 2 drum machines, so Digitact, TR-8S, because I find that they're just such a good combination. You get like the more like composed approach with I guess like with the Digitact you would have like your prepared loops, and then over top of that the TR-8S you could like improvise.
I do sometimes performances just with the modular. That has sort of the opposite problem where it's just, you don't have anything you can fall back on, and there's no way to do like a grand movement of many things changing at the same time. It's very minute changes, and it's great for sort of a ambient drone, whatever type of set. But actually, if you're dancing, you're just stuck in the same thing. Some people pull it off, but I like the combination of having like prepared material and live improvised material on top. Something else I mentioned the QB thing. So kind of a layered, really dirty kind of thing on top.
What effects are you adding there?
It's really just a 3-band stereo distortion.
Oh, okay.
It's like 6 distortion circuits.
Okay.
And then that goes through its own filter, which is also stereo, high pass, low pass.
Okay.
Similar to this, but it has resonance, so I can kind of sculpt it a little more.
So just like to sort of break these apart, or to sort of like categorize these, obviously mixer, DJ, effects, those are all effects?
Sort of.
Okay.
Mixer here, this is all effects. Well, compressor, filter, this is the Eurorack version of the Ghost. The delay, this is more filters, distortion, filter, multi-effect, reverb, and another mixer. So my goal actually is to kind of streamline this a little bit once I figure out which effects work best, and then maybe add some more, maybe drums or other things in here to make things a little more compact. I actually have some drum modules up here, which don't have a sequencer, so I'm not using them right now.
Okay.
It's work in progress. One thing that's worth talking about is actually how perfect this mixer is to do this kind of thing.
Right.
Both from the way the filters work rather than having EQ, also having this DB25 connector
Yes.
in out.
Yeah.
So when I play on my own mixer, which has the extra channels, I actually use the DB25 from my sound card into. So the three of them, it's really 3 wires, plug the sound card into the laptop and the controller, and then the drum machine or whatever into the mixer. And it's a lot more portable than literally each of these is replacing 4 stereo cables, so like 24 cables otherwise if I didn't have this.
Yeah, so it's ridiculous. I'm assuming that you've played with other mixers over the years and whatever.
Yeah.
This is going to sound really cheesy. So what is it about the Model 1 that you have or the Model 1.4 that makes you play differently?
The main one is actually the filters. That is the genius of this. One of my first regular gigs in Montreal was at a nightclub called Area, and they had an Allen and Heath V6. The V6 was designed by the same designer who collaborated with Richie Houghton on the Model 4.
Okay.
And what that was a sort of more old school mixer, 6 channels, rotary knobs, kind of like the classic house mixer, except instead of an EQ, each channel had a high pass filter. Learning how to play a lot on that mixer really informed the way I mix. The thing with a fader is that it's good for rapid cuts and things like that. But a rotary mixer lets you do really gradual, precise movements. And having the same thing with the high pass filter on each channel meant that you can really hone in on okay, how much bass of each track is playing. So rather than just cutting, doing the EQ thing back and forth, and what it allows you to do is transition so precisely and smoothly from one track to another. There are very few mixers that have filters like that. And so when this came out with that and the low pass, it was just this is exactly what I need. Because otherwise, I was doing that kind of thing in Ableton, using a MIDI controller, which is great. But then it's not the same, you have to run everything into the laptop or perform exclusively on the laptop.
Yeah.
And this allows you, it's designed for hands. And it's just, it's a performance instrument.
Yeah, that's what I love about it.
Exactly. And it's a performance instrument that was designed to work the way I want a mixer to work.
Yeah.
It's the 2 stereo auxiliary buses and the third one, which then adds another layer. Having a master filter on top of all of that, it's just it's perfect. And it's the kind of thing, you're paying a lot more for a little bit of gain, but then when it's
it also sounds really good too, which is a big part of what you're paying for.
I haven't even gotten to that yet, but yes. And there's clever features like the filters, the way they are designed to actually detect the zero crossing so that there's never a pop. When you push the button, there's actually a circuit that detects the best moment to engage or to disengage the filter, which is why it's this kind of light up button.
Right.
Dual power supplies, all of this stuff. And just the fact that it actually takes balanced I/O. It's a professional tool, and I wouldn't be able to do this with another mixer. It would be a lot more complex.
I have one possible suggestion as to why you'd want to switch to the TR-8S. The TR-8S is an audio interface. So if you wanted to get rid of that and save some space and just go whoop, and for my setup, it's perfect because the TR-8S has 8 outs. So 8, 4 stereo channels. That's precisely why it's a perfect fit for my setup. I just wanted to throw that out there for you.
You know what? I had no idea.
Plus, it's just a better drum machine. So
The other part of this is maybe sort of the DJing side of it, and there's a lot of people who disdain digital DJing and vinyl purists and all of that. First of all, I did the vinyl DJ thing for many years, so for me it's not a lack of ability, but really not feeling limited by that. For me, a DJ should be a transformative thing, not just a soundtrack or whatever background music. You know?
Like an aesthetic.
I feel like working with these digital tools allows me to be more, I don't know, artistic. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's definitely more like the music is more malleable. And then that allows me to express myself in a way that is different than just playing, you know, a record after another. So that's really, you know, for me, it's just not even, there's no comparison, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
well, like you said, it's also a lot more like creative and improvisational too, right? Like it allows you to really actually improvise. I've been toying with the idea of potentially doing some DJ stuff. Basically like you're doing, because I always like the idea of improvisation. I come from jazz, basically. I did drums, jazz drums in university and all this kind of stuff. So like that's my background. Just to have that thread into what I'm doing now it's like very tempting, as opposed to like with Ableton, pre-recording all these loops and gluing them together. There's like a lot of prep that goes into that. Yeah. Whereas I feel like this approach, the DJ approach, it's more about the craft. It's like once you have those skills, then you could just improvise, and you don't have to necessarily prep as much, you know. So it's a really tempting idea.
It's also just a different experience from the public side, you know.
Yeah.
Both, you know, hearing familiar or non-familiar music, but also the sort of journey. Like you can easily DJ for like 4, 6, 8, whatever hours. Doing a live performance that long, I mean, as a DJ, you can travel in so many different directions, much more than a single musician could create on their own.
Yes.
You know, even the most prolific kind of, you know, producer would never be able to have just a breadth of sounds that a DJ has access to.
The next thing we're going to talk about is how to transition, which is a hurdle, I would say, for pretty much any electronic musician. It's one of the most difficult things to do smoothly. Before getting into that though, if you're here, chances are that you create music, or you're striving to create music. And if you'd like to take the next step to maybe distribute that music to major streaming platforms, DistroKid's here. They got you. You're in luck, and here's a few reasons why they're great. In terms of what's new, they recently released a smartphone app, which makes checking your important DistroKid stats easy and accessible. The app is now available on Android through the Play Store. Essentially everything that you've been able to do on the DistroKid desktop app, you're now able to do through your smartphone. In fact, here's a list of key features that the app offers you. You might want to pause it now if you want to check them out. In today's day and age, we all know how many hats we have to wear as artists and producers. It can just be a lot, so write the music, produce the music. Then you've got to create content to promote it a few weeks before it's released. Then you've got to continue creating content after it's been released to promote it. It's a lot, and I'm not saying that DistroKid does all of this work for you, but they do make it a lot easier for us with the free promotional tools that they offer. The one I use most is Hyperfollow. It's essentially a free landing page or link tree. It's super clean. You could link maybe your latest video, your latest single, other important links you'd like to lead people to. I also use promo cards whenever I release a single. Just select the single that you would like to promote, and it'll auto-generate a few different options for you to choose from. Go with DistroKid. It's just over $20 a year to release unlimited music to all major streaming platforms. You keep 100% of your streaming royalties. So many other tools that they offer for someone who's independent. They're made for us. And there is a discount linked in the description of this video if you would like to join. This is something I ask everybody. So how would you transition? I mean, especially for people like with DAW-less setups, or, you know, setups that aren't DJ setups, right? Transitioning is like the hardest thing. And it seems even with DJ stuff too, it's probably still the hardest thing to do.
I mean, this is again where these filters come in, because in fact what that allows you to do is transition very smoothly between things that might not necessarily be easy to transition from. So like this, for example, this track here, my goal when I'm transitioning from one track to another is to make it as least noticeable as possible. And the basic parts of that are first using the looping function so that I can have as much time as I need to transition, and then using the filters to blend it very smoothly. So, for example, the beginning of this track doesn't have any drums, so I can just layer it on top, you know. Bring in the bass line of the other track. So, you know, at this point, nothing is clashing. I've got just drums, just bass. You could easily think they're part of the same track. And then as I see the bass on the new track the kick on the new track is coming in, shortly I'll just filter out the first one.
So obviously that's something you have to know, that you have to know the track and be prepared for that, obviously.
Yeah, it definitely helps to know the track. But also Traktor does, the kind of waveform display makes it quite obvious which parts have drums or not.
Right.
But it's also just experience in a way, it's just kind of like getting a feel for like when a track is going to transition, knowing that this is a good time to change something,
Right.
So another thing I would do in this case maybe is that as this is playing, the other track is still playing. I don't want to just cut it out all of a sudden. It's the sound. So maybe I'll just start taking out the highs. Add some effects. And just kind of make it a little, how to say, like smear the the frequencies a little bit. And then if I start fading out the dry signal but leaving in the wet signal.
That's a nice smooth transition.
Exactly. So I'm still getting some of that frequencies.
Yeah.
They're recognizable. And then, I can start fading that out. As the strings come in on the new track and sort of the mid-range is filling up, I'll take out, that. So then you end up with a very, very smooth transition. If I'm playing 4 decks, then maybe this drum loop, I might leave it for like 20 minutes, just going on constantly.
Yeah.
Because that kind of glues everything together.
Yeah.
Because as long as that is constant, if I'm changing the other tracks, I could have actually very different things, but that one drum loop running through everything will tie everything together.
Right.
So you'll get there's a sense of continuity through there.